The story begins with someone opening a door. Looking at the sky, he complains of pain in his eyes. A man, lighting a cigarette, asks who sent him there. Another young man is driving himself, visibly injured, asking if he really thinks it will end like this. He confirms that soon another group will come and find him, assuring that the guy won't be able to do anything while alone. Without saying anything, the guy grabs his pistol, while the injured man keeps telling him to apologize. However, blood pours out as the crazy guy tells the man to shut up. Suddenly, he notices a presence. Looking back, the man realizes it's just his dog. The little animal was incredibly joyful. With a smile, the sadist asks if he kept him waiting too long, calling the dog Mongo. Jivan asks if he's hungry, saying they will go home and eat something together. This was the number one assassin, the ghost of the fight. While heading home, he sees a mother talking to her child, saying she will make something nice for him after school. Seeing that, the guy wonders if he ran out of snacks for Mongo. Noticing a message on his phone, Jian suspects it might be a new mission, but it turns out to be just a spam message. After some time, the protagonist is already at a pet shop. Looking at some treats, he wonders if his dog will like them, but soon decides to just buy them all. Suddenly, someone appears and says that this is the perfect moment. Ignoring him, John wonders what the guy is mumbling about. Irritated, the protagonist asks if the man is really going to keep saying that nonsense and if he's talking to him. But to his surprise, the guy claims that he nailed it. With a smile, he points a gun to the protagonist's head, saying that this is the perfect day for his death. Saying goodbye to number one, however, the guy just curses him while staring at the pistol. Jian says he knew something like this would happen, saying he had a bad feeling. Assuming that was the cause of his death, he says this wasn't a dignified death for an assassin, assuring he will have his revenge on the messy-haired guy. However, his biggest concern was for his own dog. After all, he would be alone from that moment on. But suddenly, he opens his eyes while Mongo is looking at him. Another young man also looks at him confused. Suddenly, Jian jumps up quickly, hitting the guy's face with his head. Placing his hand on his head, he wonders if he hadn't died. After all, he had been shot in the head. Looking at Mongo, the protagonist says he's happy that the dog didn't get hurt. Surprisingly, the man says he finally woke up. The bald man starts saying that his savior finally heard his prayers. Startled, he looks around and sees many other people asking everyone to keep hope. A little nervous, he complains about what all of this is. At that moment, the young man goes back to greeting his savior. Another man introduces himself as the first elder of the bloody death cult, Daeduk. Still confused, John wonders why they are calling him savior. The elder says he has a request. With a scary expression, the guy asks him to help them conquer Murim. Still not understanding anything, Jian starts asking what they are talking about, complaining about what kind of place this is, realizing that this was not the world he was used to. In fact, it was an alternate dimension called Murim, and in order to conquer such a world, these people decided to summon him. He lets out a big sigh, calling them a bunch of lunatics, leaving everyone sad. Becoming increasingly nervous, he grabs his phone, trying to find his signal. Completely changing his personality, the protagonist tells those people to take him back to his world, stating that he needs to find the guy who shot him, while the elder asks if he's not their savior. Scaring the man, Jian says that besides being bald, the elder is also decrepit, asking them to stop with this nonsense and send him back. Suddenly, a loud laugh erupts. It almost deafens the protagonist. A man says that this is the spirit of his savior. The guy says that the elder is not bald. After all, he never had a single strand of hair. People are stunned by this, claiming that God must have cursed him. Furious, Daeduk says he should have never told him that, also ensuring that the protagonist should not impulsively say anything that comes to his mind. Giving a deadly glare, Hyeokyung says that he should keep that in mind if he doesn't want to die. This man was the leader of the cult. With a smile, Jian calls him Grandpa, stating that they are making a mistake, as they are the ones to blame for summoning him there. Preparing his lei, he asks what the old man will do to him, warning the man to be careful with his answer. Otherwise, he will die by his own hands. Daeduk quickly approaches, asking how he dares to speak like that to his leader. However, Hyeokyung says that it's fine, as he will deal with this quickly. Staring at him, the old man says that if the savior can defeat him, he will immediately give up his position as leader, and after that, he will have the power to do whatever he wants. Anxious, the elder asks his lord to wait, warning that he shouldn't provoke him recklessly. The leader says that if the boy cannot defeat him, he will be punished, but the protagonist tries to say that he just wants to go home. However, he feels an extremely crushing pressure. Jivan is visibly terrified, while the old man states that he will show him something. The protagonist keeps questioning what kind of dangerous sensation this is, while the elder says that he will present him with hell. Trying to calm down, he says that the old man won't be able to do anything, while noticing that he has never felt anything like this before. Taking a fighting stance, the guy convinces himself that there is no way the number one assassin will lose to someone like this. The leader asks if the boy is ready. On the other hand, the protagonist assures that he doesn't need to prepare to deal with an old man. Hyeokyung says he wants to see how long that arrogance will last, but Jian says he will let him throw the first punch. The elder declares that he won't refuse. After that, in the blink of an eye, he disappears from his front. With that, the protagonist is extremely terrified when he sees that. The old man was already in front of him, preparing to punch him. In his fist, a powerful whirlwind of wind is being formed. The attack hits him, throwing the boy backward. However, an even more powerful blow completely throws him toward the wall. At the moment his back hits the wall, large cracks form due to the impact, generating a huge explosion of dust at the location, making Jun spit blood and be stunned by the strength of the cult leader. The elder says that apparently he can't even avoid such a basic attack. Calling him young, Hyo-kyung asks if he really is his esteemed savior, saying that the boy is pathetic as he hasn't even become a worthy opponent. What? To his surprise, Mangu bites his leg. Worried, the protagonist tells his little dog to run away. Ji-yoon grits his teeth while threatening the cult leader, telling him not to touch his dog. However, the animal is thrown. Irritated, he looks at what passed by his side, seeing that Mangu was thrown against the wall. Hyo-kyung asks the elder to lock the boy in the underground prison and throw the beast to the wolves. Screaming furiously, the protagonist affirms that it's not just a dog, saying that it is part of his family. He goes on to say angrily that he had warned that he would kill him if the man touched Mangu, and asks if the old man really thinks he is the strongest person there. Getting up, John asks if the guy wants to know who the strongest person in the world is. Daedok asks if the boy has gone mad after being beaten up. The protagonist complains, asking if the strongest person is the one who has the most money or physical strength, saying that it is neither of those options. Drawing even more attention from the leader, he asks if it would be someone with a knife in their hand, also assuring that it is not the best option. The elder asks what that is, while Hyo-kyung says that the object is interesting. Jian asks them to remember that the strongest person is the one who has a gun in their hand, pointing his pistol at both of them. With that, he pulls the trigger, generating a bright flash. The two remain still while the projectile approaches. The elder assumes that he would like to know what that is for. However, his forehead is hit by the shot. Daedok agrees with his leader, asking what the purpose of that is, while Hyo-kyung falls backward with a hole in his head. Seeing his lord falling, the elder becomes extremely frightened. At that moment, the man simply falls stiff on the ground. It is announced that Hyo-kyung was killed at the age of 64. The elder becomes extremely confused, frozen, not knowing how to react. Enraged, Daedok orders everyone to attack the assassin of his leader to make sure he doesn't live another day. After that, everyone rushes toward the protagonist. Jun tells them to come at him. Pulling out the other pistol, he states that his weapon is already waiting for them. With that, the protagonist begins shooting at the crowd. The projectiles are heading towards the disciples' heads. Flipping two of them, he says that those guys chose the wrong opponent. With that, he shoots a few more times, causing many of his enemies to fall, each time shooting wildly, killing each one of those who tried to go against him. The elder grows more and more nervous, hearing his companions screaming for help and planning ways to attack him. One man screams desperately, asking him to stop, claiming that they will apologize since it's their fault. The protagonist questions if the man knows the moral lesson he's learned in his life. Throwing a punch, he says that all kindness must be tempered. With that, the man's hand hits the guy's face, causing him to collapse backward, blood gushing from his nose. The crazy guy quickly extends his arm toward the man. Holding him by the hair, the assassin assures him that his revenge is complete. At that time, the protagonist was 18 years old. Out of 282 fights, he had won them all, becoming the leader of a motorcycle gang. Suddenly, someone appears and calls him a kid, asking if he thinks he's the strongest since there's no one who could beat him. However, he asks if the boy knows who the real strongest is, someone he could never defeat. With a short fuse, the protagonist says that's nonsense. Staring at the guy, John asks if he looks like a fool or something. Apparently bored, the boy asks him to say if there is really someone stronger, asking him to bring him there. However, he freezes in fear the moment after, quickly looking down, frightened. The man had shot him in the leg, saying that no matter how strong he is, he could never beat a weapon. On his knees on the ground, the protagonist asks why he did that. The guy says there's a reason he approached, claiming he wanted to offer him something. Annoyed, John questions why he shot instead of just talking. With a smile, the guy says he's exaggerating as he shot him kindly. The protagonist asks if he's crazy. Pointing his gun at the boy's head, he says that this is fascinating as life and death are decided by a single finger. Nervously, John asks what he means by all that. The crazy guy tells the protagonist to work for him, assuring that he'll make him a strong person. Returning to the present moment, he was pointing his gun at someone. The elder had been shot in the shoulder. Jian asks if the bald guy understands now, questioning who the strongest person is there, while behind him were dozens of bodies scattered around. Frightened, the guy begins saying he will give him whatever he wants, asking him to at least spare his life. After a while, he asks if the place is comfortable. From that moment on, the protagonist became the leader of the cult. Alongside him, Mangu became the vice leader. Suddenly, a beam of light passes by the elder's face. His ear had been injured due to a shot from the protagonist. Annoyed, John says that he didn't ask to be put in this position, claiming that he just wants to return to his world, saying that he needs to kill the guy who made a hole in his head, making Daedok more and more anxious. Afraid, he informs that he doesn't know how to send him back. The protagonist says that if the guy really didn't know, he should have warned him earlier. With that, he puts his gun to the man's head. Holding the guy, John says he'll help him reunite with his former leader. Bowing, he asks for a few days to find a way to send him back. asking him to at least give him more time. Still angry, the protagonist says he understands, giving him the deadline. Seeing the guy leave desperately, John wonders if he should kill him. Sitting down again, he says that besides his phone being dead, he feels like he's going to go crazy with this whole situation. Suddenly, his phone starts ringing. Looking at it, the protagonist asks how that's possible. However, the guy notices that the message is from the same company that contacted him earlier with a new offer to dominate the Maroon world. Remembering the spam he received earlier, offering the same opportunity and warning that it was valid for a short period of time. The new message says that 30 minutes have passed without receiving a refusal response, also asking why 1 + 2 = 5. Nervous, he tries to send a message but can't, while the step-by-step of his new dimension is explained to him. Suddenly, he's informed that he can only return to Earth after completing the mission of Miram domination. And if he doesn't complete it within a year, there will be a penalty. His beloved Manhua would be killed. Making the assassin more and more terrified, they mock him, claiming that they can't let something so cute die. With that, Myung wishes him good luck, while the protagonist curses. Opening a door, Jian calls for the bald guy. Daedok was packing his things while calling the new leader crazy, assuring that if he knew how, he would have sent him back already. Making him jump in shock as Lord asks where he thinks he's going. Extremely frightened, the man says he was talking about his son, claiming that the suitcase is to look for a way to send him back. Seeing that it might not work, Daedok starts begging for his life, even though the protagonist asks him to wait, announcing that even though the man is a bloodthirsty demon, there will be terrible consequences if he keeps killing. But that only makes the assassin even angrier, telling him to shut up and listen to him. With that, he begins to say that he wants to know more about what the bald guy mentioned earlier. Confused, the elder asks about what exactly, and the protagonist says they're going to do that thing. Staring at him, John says they will conquer the Murim. Emotional, the bald guy claims that he never doubted him, informing his leader that he will prepare everything. However, the guy says he has one condition. After some time outside the castle, someone asks for everyone to listen. Daedok warns that he will deliver an order in the name of the leader, informing that from now on, the bloody death cult no longer exists. And from that moment on, it will be called the Manhwa cult. All the members start shouting the new name, worshipping the image of the dog. Even though they're celebrating, some of the members are crying, wanting to flee from the cult, which is now called Manga, wondering why the leader named the cult after that beast. But upon seeing that cute being, they begin to say that maybe it's not so bad. With that, everyone starts devoting themselves to the great dog Manga. In another location, someone informed that the leader of the bloody death cult had changed, along with its name. An elder says that the bloody death has become the Manhwa cult. Noticing that apparently a new wind is blowing through this failed cult, this was the leader of the Kunlun sect, Yegwang. The elder asks his subordinate if he has any information about the new leader, but he replies that he only knows about his strange weapon. The man asks if it's a secret demonic art, and the young man confirms. He informs that with every one of his movements, a person dies. The old man asks what kind of amazing movement is that. The boy says that the new master only moves his finger. Showing his middle finger, the guy says that apparently he only moves one single finger. With some nervousness, Jagwang asks if it's this exact finger, but his subordinate confirms that it is exactly what he imagines. In another cult, someone says that soon everything will become very violent. Another person questions if that makes sense. A man named Dongwang, the fifth elder, says that a new leader was appointed without their approval, just because he defeated the old one. Hyolhub, the second elder, says that the doctrine states that the strongest person holds the highest position in the cult. The fifth elder declares that he will not accept this, but his companion tells him to be careful with his words. Suddenly, someone slams the table, declaring that they are also feeling disrespected. A fat man asks if Chiolo knows how many sacrifices he has made for the bloody death cult. Claiming that he gave up eating, sleeping, and doing many other things, he questions how they could decide such a thing without him. The second elder says that if they have complaints, they must prove their strength in order to have the right to make such claims. However, they must keep in mind that this man defeated the former leader of the cult, and if they challenge him because they are carried away by emotions, they will die for no reason. The three of them look in one direction. In front of them stood the protagonist with the bald man. Daedok asks everyone to greet the new leader. Quickly, both of them stand up, somewhat eager. They greet him, saying it's a pleasure to meet the new leader. Yukpei looks confused upon seeing something. Right behind Jian stood the reason for the cult's new name. The fat man approaches and asks how such a small and adorable puppy can exist. He questions the protagonist about where he found that cute beast. The guy continues talking, asking how that thing ended up there. Suddenly, someone calls him a worm. Irritated, the leader punches his face, asking if he thinks his dog arrived by car or something like that. Yukpei falls to the floor while the guy continues glaring at him. He asks if they called him there to mock him. He orders the fat man never to open his mouth again while he's present. Scaring him more, Jion questions if he's really going to challenge him, while the man tries to apologize. Sweating profusely, the first elder says that they will begin the council meeting now. The protagonist is relaxed as they ask the leader to start. He says that from that moment on, they will conquer the Murim. However, if they fail to conquer it within a year, everyone must commit suicide, causing Dongwang to be shocked and ask what nonsense that is. So the leader asks if anyone wants to die, assuring them that if that's not their desire, everyone must start planning ways to conquer the Murim. Someone raises their hand, determined to step forward and tell him. Kyola thinks to himself that this is impossible to achieve in a year, asking if he could give his opinion. However, Jian says no, as he seems to have a personality similar to that of a T. Confused, the elder asks what that means. The protagonist claims that he would say it's impossible, calling him a damned bastard. Still, the guy continues wondering what he meant by T. But suddenly, one of them slams his hand on the table. The fifth elder says that the more he listens to that nonsense, the more he realizes that the leader is crazy. He says that Daedok is not the talkative type, and he made this man his new leader without consulting them first. Dongwang says that even though Jian defeated the former leader, he still doesn't accept it, stating that he will only recognize him under one condition: if the protagonist fights him for the position of chief. But the assassin says that this is ridiculous, since it was them who summoned him, and questions if the guy can live with the consequences. Mentally, the feared battle ghost says that this guy probably has skills similar to the former leader. Reloading his weapon, he realizes that he doesn't have many bullets, so he will need to use them sparingly. Seeing the man standing with his head lowered, Dongwang wonders why he is suddenly acting that way. Convinced, the guy says that the protagonist is probably scared, since he must have defeated the former leader using some trick. Daedok calls out to his colleague, asking him to give up any foolish ideas. However, the guy ignores him and calls for the new chief. Mocking him, the fifth elder asks if he's getting scared. On the other hand, the first elder, along with the dog, is extremely shocked by something like this, while John becomes furious. Dongwang continues questioning if he's scared, calling him the leader of the chicken cult. Losing all his patience, the protagonist points his gun, telling that insect to die. He soon starts pulling the trigger. However, his weapon is replaced by his phone. He opens it, curious about what he sees. Smiling, the fifth elder asks why he doesn't attack him, stating that perhaps people think he's the real one in charge here. Standing up, Jian questions if he really wants a fight between them. He then walks toward the man. Stopping in front of him, the protagonist says that they will do it. Making him nervous, the leader says that there's a catch. With a menacing look, he demands that there be one single condition. Scaring Dongwang with his intention to kill, Jian says that for this position at stake, they will need a special duel. The fifth elder tries to deny, but causing even more terror, the protagonist asks if he's scared. Someone asked if Manga was hungry, but to their surprise, Dongwang was standing in front of him, saying good morning to his leader. He punches his subordinate in the face, claiming it scared him. The protagonist says his fist moved by reflex, asking what he wants, but the man says he was his night guard. Assuring that no one will disturb his rest, Jian tells him to leave, claiming that he is more scared of his presence. Like a child, the fifth elder begins to leave his lord's quarters. Scaring Dongwang, the protagonist asks what he is doing. The man says it was him who ordered him to be there in the morning. He tells the man to call all the elders. Gathered with everyone, John asks them to explain why they call him this savior and why they want to conquer the Murim. Hyolo asks for permission to explain, clarifying that the alliance of the orthodox sects saw the former blood death cult as a thorn in their side. The reason for this is that, despite their differing values and teachings, their cult was prosperous. This envy soon turned into a fire arrow pointed at them. Thanks to the large difference in numbers, their forces were defeated. Consequently, they became targets not only of the orthodox sects but also of the unorthodox sects. The protagonist says that it seems they do not belong to any of these groups. His subordinate says that he is correct, stating they are simply following their beliefs. Jian says that after all that happened, peace is over. Kitolo says they would like to unite this entire hellish world under the command of their leader and savior, so that they can bring peace to the Murim, but admits that achieving this in 1 year, as planned by their lord, is objectively impossible. However, the crazy guy says they don't need to care about the peace of that cult, assuring that they are not Power Rangers. He says that uniting these parts peacefully is something even Korea hasn't achieved. Also, he is no savior. Worried, the first elder says that they couldn't know who the summoned savior would be. Confused, the protagonist asks what he means by that. The man says that on the day they were attacked. Returning to the day of the attack, people begged for someone to stop, begging for him to wait a moment. The first elder claimed to be only a servant who does as told. His enemy says that's funny since he says this while wearing fancy clothes. The man says he can't hide that bald head. He looks at the other man standing next to him, questioning how the guy got there. He tries to ask the masked man to reveal himself, but his neck is completely twisted. Scared, Daedok is horrified and says disgusting. He says he's very old and sick, claiming he doesn't have much time to live, begging to be spared. But suddenly, that mysterious person kicks a scroll toward the elder. He says that on a specific day and place, a savior will appear in the Murim, telling them to prepare and welcome him. Confused, the man asks what that person means by a savior. Leaving, the hooded man tells him to read the letter, claiming everything will make sense. this. The protagonist asks if he's saying he doesn't even know that mysterious man. The first elder says he's right, but he clearly remembers something, assuring that the man was also bald just like him. Seeing that, Jian says that it seems it went from one bald head to another. He says that, in short, that mysterious person is the one who sent him, wondering what that guy's goal is. Suddenly, a wounded man appears, apologizing for interrupting the meeting, but warns that there is something they need to see. With a mix of irritation and bloodlust, the protagonist asks what's going on. In front of the palace, numerous bodies were scattered on the ground. Someone says that must be the new leader of the cult, apologizing for his subordinates, informing that they wanted to stop them. Before him stood Gopung, the ghost sword, who told him not to worry, assuring that they must all be alive. Jian asks why they entered his territory, causing such a storm, especially so early with all these people. The old man explains that he wanted to take over the Blood Death cult, and after hearing there was a new leader, he realized it might be his opportunity. After all, the former leader was killed by a nameless outsider, asking how he could just stand by after seeing that, especially with such a strong temptation before him. Irritated, John asks if he wants to make a show with such a big speech, declaring that in the end he only wants to take it for himself. Gopung says that he's smarter than he imagined, affirming that now he knows his intentions and asking what his reaction will be. Placing his hand on his weapon, the protagonist says that's obvious. The old man claims that it seems he isn't so smart. Someone asks if there's really a reason for the old man to want to handle this alone. The number 2 of the Jianeng sect assures that he can handle that brat alone. A little nervous, the protagonist doesn't understand why the giant acts, questioning if they want to kill him with that. The big guy says he's asking the obvious, claiming that he will do it quickly. Running toward the new leader of the cult. Still apprehensive, John notices that he's very fast. Desperately, he stays frozen in place. Suddenly, he sees that his weapon is not in its proper place. Surprisingly, his enemy's axe was already close to the protagonist's head. A lot of blood splashes through the air, but Jianeng notices something's wrong. Someone stands in front of the protagonist, questioning how this guy dares to say he will hurt his leader in front of the elders. Yupei had protected his lord with his own body, claiming that he won't even scratch him. The 5th elder says that his companion is right for the first time, claiming that besides insulting the cult, he threatened them. Preparing an attack, he says this is a heinous crime, striking a large and powerful attack against his adversary's head. Therefore, they paid with their own lives. Protected by both, the protagonist mentally notes that Dungwang is absurdly strong, surpassing his expectations. Moreover, the 4th elder is also useful, and if he plays his cards right, the conquest of the Murim is not far away. Gopung says that apparently they chose the hardest path. Frighteningly, the old man tells everyone to pay attention since this condemned them to the complete fall of their cult. Heading toward him, John asks why he talks so much, assuring that he will say it only once and tells everyone to listen carefully. With a knife in hand, he says he will not expel anyone who wants to fight, but he will not let them stay alive. Staring at each other, they promise to kill one another. The crowd moves toward the protagonist, while his elders go toward the enemies. At the moment when the 2 leaders commit to killing each other, Dungwang opens a big, beautiful smile, ready to fight. Launching himself against the army, the man says he was just waiting for those words. Looking at that, Jian realizes that this crazy guy is truly useful. On the other hand, he sees the big guy rolling down the stairs, assuming he has some doubts about this other guy. The 5th elder causes a loud crash. With a bloodthirsty look, the psychopath says he's been trapped for a long time and tells everyone to come at him. Quickly, several soldiers from the sect prepare to attack him. However, the man starts to dodge easily. Preparing to land a powerful punch on his opponent with a single strike, he kicks one of them down. Getting angrier, the other 2 ask how dare he. Skillfully, Dungwang spins his body and defeats both of them. But suddenly, he looks back in surprise. Another strange figure tells him to die while brandishing his sword. However, they stand still, not moving. The man says that sword was given to him by his father as an inheritance. Holding the sword, the 5th elder simply smiles at his opponent. Surprisingly, he just breaks it with his hand and suddenly grabs him by the neck. Lifting him up while the man gasps for air, he slams him against the ground with his arm. Staring at him, Dungwang says that those skills are laughable, but to his surprise, a shadow appears behind him. Thus, the 5th elder prepares to attack that person. However, it was his companion, who tells him not to worry as he is protecting him. Another person attacks the big guy, questioning whether he really can withstand all that. However, his expression changes completely. Yupei defends, claiming that he had already said they wouldn't even be able to scratch his body, but someone says he's bleeding. Delivering a punch, the 4th elder assures that they will regret their foolish choices. Striking the punch, unlike him, the man can't stop his attack. However, the blow doesn't cause any damage. But contrary to what everyone expected, Yupei had no attacking power. Seeing that, Jian doesn't like the outcome of that confrontation. Suddenly, 2 people armed with swords appear behind him. Those 2 men claim it's impossible for someone who claims to be the leader of a sect to turn his back on his enemies so easily. They say it'll have the pleasure of killing him. However, someone calls him from behind, leaving one of the warriors confused. Preparing to break the enemy's neck, the protagonist warns him that he is looking in the wrong direction. With that, Jian twists the man's head. His companion stands frozen for a moment, not knowing how to react. The man, still confused, realizes that this is the new leader of the cult. Regaining his senses, he quickly tries to attack him but ends up being killed as well. His His head is completely severed with a single blow. The protagonist then refocuses on the other side. Cursing at them, John asks if those trash people are really going to continue. Holding his knife in front, he questions if they really think he's such an easy target. Leaping toward the sect members, the guy quickly manages to kill all three who had challenged him. Moving faster and faster across the place, the crazy guy jumps to attack one more of the men. Landing a devastating blow to his head, he proclaims that he'll give them advice for next time they try to attack someone. He says that first of all, they should learn about their opponent. Around the fifth elder, various bodies were scattered across the courtyard. He looks back indifferently, but while stating that the end is near, a large attack with a purple blade passes close to his body. The attack from the sect leader causes massive destruction across the area. He quickly resumes his stance. Dam Wang says that even though that man is a sect leader, he continues to resort to small surprise attacks, embarrassing himself. However, he suddenly feels something very wrong. Gopeng says that this was a poison developed to kill a former chief. Smiling maniacally as his veins turn completely blue, the psychopath says that it would be more useful this way. Swinging his sword, he says that the fifth elder will soon meet Hayokian. Dam Wang charges toward the old man. Throwing a punch in his opponent's blade, the force of the attacks generates a strong shockwave, imbued with poison. Both of them are thrown back. The fifth elder says that the poison is preventing his internal energy from reaching his fists. However, Jian is watching everything with an intimidating gaze. Still trying to find his weapon, he says he doesn't have a good feeling about all this. However, the protagonist looks to the side, noticing something. Complimenting little Manga as he had found his weapon, he watches the two fight. Jian states that it would be difficult to win against those guys without a weapon. Even so, his bullet count is limited and he cannot afford to use them recklessly. However, he can't let a threat stay alive. But something else grabs his attention, making him look up. The old sect leader asks the fifth elder where the prodigy of the cult went. He also mocks the new name given to that group, since they call themselves the Cult of Mongo. Suddenly, two people appear in the sky, locking Gopeng's throat with a chain. A woman begins falling toward the man with two blades in her hands. The old man tries to beg for mercy, but a cut passes through his head. Horan has completely destroyed the sect leader. The third elder says she would like to formally introduce herself, but the situation isn't favorable for that. She says that this will be their first contact, introducing herself as the captain of the Iron Blood Squadron. Seeing that woman, the protagonist realizes that she seems more useful than all the other elders. Still holding his knife, she says she's curious to know the skill levels of their new leader. With that, she quickly moves to attack him. Getting closer, the woman says that someone strong enough to defeat the former chief alongside the fifth elder is quite interesting. Jin feels apprehensive as he watches the scene unfold. The girl quickly strikes at the man. With her eyes glowing red, Horan assumes that she just wanted to give him a little scare. But based on his reaction, her new master didn't win by luck. Preparing herself again, she anxiously wonders if he will be able to stop the next attack. The protagonist quickly says that she shouldn't do that, assuring her that he is not generous enough to let two attacks pass unscathed. As the leader points his weapon at her, the woman realizes that this may be the tool everyone has been talking about, but she mentally admits that it doesn't seem good enough to defeat those two men, and she needs to check if it really is all that. However, Horan becomes even more anxious and nervous. Not understanding what kind of feeling is overtaking her body, she feels as though one wrong step could kill her. She wonders if this will be her end. Daeduk, witnessing this, becomes nervous and afraid. However, the third elder says that it seems he really did manage to defeat the former leader. After all, only the strongest of all could become the leader of the sect he belongs to, so she needed to verify it personally. Greeting him, Horan apologizes for the disrespect she has shown him. Confused, the protagonist wonders if this woman is crazy. Suddenly, Jianang, who had been thrown back, starts to wake up again. He assumes that the power was incredible, but still states that he won't give up easily. The big guy starts yelling, cursing everyone and warning them that his leader's nickname is Cruel Sword. He assures them that the old man will kill them and torture them, and with his resources, they will make a festival out of it. But looking down, he finally notices that Gopeng is dead. He grumbles, saying that he had thought it was a bad idea from the beginning. Suddenly, a spirit-like figure of his leader appears right behind him. The man just shakes his head in disapproval. In a room, the protagonist says that at least they managed to resolve the situation this time. On the other hand, next year there will always be incidents as they continue their conquest of Murim. Remembering the fight with the fifth elder, he mentions that people who can send others flying with a single punch, who can split the earth with their swords, if these are the ones they're dealing with now, then stronger ones will come, and the next person to die will possibly be him. With that, he gets out of bed. Suddenly, John goes to the first elder. The man asks what brings him to such a place, though mentally he's extremely anxious. The protagonist asks where he could find information on potential future enemies and possible allies. Surprised, Daeduk realizes that he's finally asking normal questions. He directs him to visit the Hao clan, explaining that this is a group of low-class people, such as doormen, courtesans, and restaurant managers. They gather information from various places and sell it to third parties, acting as information brokers. Jian says he understands and asks where he should find them. Slightly nervous, the elder asks if he really really wants to go there personally. The protagonist affirms that he does, as he wants to hear the information firsthand and make his own judgment. Daedok says he will send someone to accompany him, but the leader quickly orders him not to even think about bringing that woman. As he mentions Hworin, the fifth elder appears. Quickly, he strikes his subordinate, but it causes no apparent damage while Dongwang assures that he will guide him. But suddenly, the elder collapses on the floor, drooling, while his leader says that he shouldn't include him either. After some time in a city in the middle of the night, several people walk and talk in the streets. Inside one of the carriages, a leader of the Manga cult is accompanied by the fifth elder. In a terrifying way, he thinks to himself that he definitely told that guy not to include that fool. Furthermore, the woman is also here, complaining about why she is dressed that way. Just before this moment, Daedok had gathered everyone, informing them that their lord needs an escort to the Hao clan. Dongwang, along with Hworin, quickly volunteers. The first elder wonders why it has to be them. However, the third elder says that she always takes missions outside the clan, assuring that it is natural for her to be present since she knows the outside world. But in reality, she just wanted to eat and buy new clothes. On the other hand, Dongwang says that he disagrees, asking why he wouldn't follow his leader. After all, they are one body and mind. His colleague quickly retorts that this is nonsense, as he has never been to the Hao clan, but the crazy guy asks how a woman dares to say that. She questions what he is talking about. After all, she's the older sister, but the guy says it makes no difference, asking her to let him go. While they argue, the first elder no longer knows what to do. Furious, the protagonist assures that the first thing he will do when he returns is kill the bald guy. The coachman warns that since it's late, he recommends that they all spend the night in the city. Someone welcomes them. A man approaches and asks how he can assist them. The fifth elder asks him to give them 4 rooms, food, and drinks, while John specifies exactly what he wants. The young man tells them to sit for a moment, saying he will bring the food and drinks soon. But suddenly, some people abruptly enter the place. The first-generation disciples of the Kunlun sect question if there are any drinks or empty rooms left. Sangshin says that if there are, they belong to his group from now on. Otherwise, the guy should find them a place. The attendant apologizes, saying that John and his companions have already taken the last available rooms. The madman goes up to the protagonist, stating that he's never been here before, but they should know him, claiming he's going to take the rooms. But he's confused when he sees something. Seeing the third elder, the guy says he's never seen someone so beautiful in the city. Sangshin approaches, asking where she's from, introducing himself as a disciple of the first generation of Kunlun. Walking, she doesn't associate with those low-class men, offering to spend the night with him. Blushing with anger, Dongwang thinks to himself that if that insect wasn't a member of that sect, he would have finished him off. Back to the meeting, someone tells the two of them to stop. Hyolo says that both can go, but they should keep something in mind. Don't let other sects know about their movements. Grinding his teeth in anger, the fifth elder says to his leader that he will ask at other inns. That madman interrupts, questioning who he thinks he is to have any complaints. However, someone kicks him in the groin. Jian stands in front of him, glaring at him menacingly. Barely able to speak, a man asks how he dares to do that, claiming he won't go unpunished. But the sect leader kicks him again. This causes the guy to spit blood and fall backward, sending Sangshin flying, blood gushing from his face. Furious, the protagonist tells him to call his companions, assuring that he'll be waiting for them. Turning around, he asks the attendant how long it will take for his food to arrive. Nervous, Dongwang watches the whole situation. Seeing the beaten disciple, the fifth elder quickly realizes they're in trouble. He remains anxious as he watches the man lying on the ground. Mentally, he blames himself for not stopping his master from causing this mess. The other 2 disciples of the man move to attack them, but Hworin quickly throws a dagger at them. It embeds in one of their chests. His companion states the obvious, saying the man has a knife stuck in his body, while Hworin leaps to strike the second one. Angry, he curses the woman, claiming she was cowardly for throwing a blade like that. Silencing him, the third elder strikes the top of his head, sending him crashing to the ground. She quickly uses her hand to push herself up and attack the other. In an instant, she lands a blow on the man who had the knife in his chest. Her kick completely deforms his face. Regaining her composure, she prevents herself from losing balance. Standing as if nothing had happened, the woman calls for her subordinates. 2 figures quickly appear behind her. Both ask if their captain has called them. Retrieving her blade, Hworin tells them it's time for them to work. She instructs them to leave the 2 alive, but to drug them with wandering souls so they forget the incident. Afterward, they should leave them at a tavern full of prostitutes. Serious, the woman calls for her leader, saying they need to talk. A little nervous, the protagonist complains if that crazy woman is going to attack him again. Sometime later, the 3 of them are sitting at a table. The third elder asks if he even knows who those men were. Confused, Jian questions what she's talking about. Hworin says they are disciples of the Kunlun sect, members of the Harem alliance responsible for the fall of his cult. She warns that if the news spreads, that terrible past will repeat itself, but she doesn't want her second family to be destroyed. Jiu continues staring at her, pondering what he just heard. Returning to his past, he remembers a shelf with a photo, as the word echoes in his mind. Apparently, he was the child in the picture. As she says they need to avoid conflict with the Harem alliance alliance at all costs, the protagonist remains silent. With a different expression than he usually wears, Jian says he'll keep that in mind. The fifth elder is extremely surprised by how easily his master agreed, while the woman thanks him for it. He asks if the Hao clan is also part of the alliance, but Horan assures them they aren't. The woman suggests that even though he's tired, the best option would be for him to go directly to the Hao clan with the fifth elder to ensure his safety. Dongguang asks what she will do, and the Iron Blood Squadron captain says she will stay here to dispose of any evidence. Standing up, the woman asks for permission from her leader, wishing him good luck. More time passes and the day is already broken. The fifth elder calls for the protagonist. He informs him that they just arrived, and Jian yawns, saying it took too long. Entering an establishment, he quickly asks if anyone is there. An old man greets them and asks what he can do for them. Making the old man completely change his expression, Jian says he's heard rumors that he sells special alcoholic beverages. With that, the old man simply pulls a lever. Revealing a secret passage, he asks them to follow him. Thus, the three begin to descend a staircase. At the end of the cave, the old man asks them to enter. The two move forward and are greeted by a man who claims to be the manager of the Hao clan's branch in Qinghai province. In his mind, the man thinks the Manhua cult has lost all its former prestige. Therefore, he doesn't know if it's a good idea for him to greet them. Somewhat skeptical, the man asks what brings him here. Growing irritated, the fifth elder notices that the tone of this guy is annoying, as if he feels superior to his leader. On the other hand, the protagonist scratches his ear as if nothing is bothering him. Mengi realizes he's been ignored, thinking to himself that Jian still maintains pride, even though he's the leader of a ruined cult. He declares he didn't mean to disrespect the great leader of Mangu and asks if they feel uncomfortable. Dunwang grows even angrier, cursing him in his head and wondering how that worm wants to die. But in a dark manner, his master begins to laugh maniacally. The branch manager says that apparently he liked his joke very much and starts laughing just as wildly. The old man is confused as he watches the two crazy men laugh non-stop. Suddenly, Mengi stops laughing, saying that if this is all, he will leave first. The protagonist asks Dongguang if the Hao clan really has no connection to the alliance, which his subordinate confirms. With that in mind, John points at the manager. Enraged, he tells the fifth elder to grab him. Excited, Dongguang replies that he understands and uses his tiger fist. He lands a powerful punch on Mengi's face. This sends him crashing through all the walls of the place. Walking through the structure, Jian says that apparently he underestimated him just because he laughed with him for a moment. However, the cult leader had gone there personally as a sign of respect, and the manager should have greeted him properly. Looking at the old man, the protagonist asks if the manager doesn't agree with that, asking him to sit because of his back. Surprised, the fifth elder admits that at first he thought everything was due to emotions, but apparently his master knows everything. However, the old man becomes euphoric, called by the branch manager. This completely confuses Dongguang. The psychopath begins to laugh, realizing he was completely wrong in his assumption. Outside, someone is watching the location. The man starts to dissipate into some kind of smoke. He speaks to someone, asking where the Manhua cult leader is at that moment. Another person tells him his current location is at the Hao clan branch in Qinghai province with the fifth elder. After hearing about the Kunlun sect, the man says they can't let this go unpunished, asking to send a message. Removing his mask, he says he'll soon pay them a visit and the cult should prepare. Returning to the branch, the manager was furious about them daring to attack him, claiming that he would not forgive them. The protagonist calls out to him, telling the man to sit down as they need to talk. The man starts to say that someone inferior like him couldn't do this, but Jian asks if the man is going to sit or take another beating. The manager asks what the leader of such a grand cult is doing in such an insignificant place. Jian says he wants to know everything about the sects affiliated with the Harem alliance. The man replies that if that's the case, he came to the right place. Staying quiet, the protagonist tells him to look for groups that might support him. The man was a bit confused, wondering if Jian wanted to start a war, and asks why he would do such a thing. However, the protagonist asks in a threatening tone if he really needs to explain the details. The man says that these things are classified as high level, making the price high, but Jian says he'll leave it for 30 silvers. Mengi says that although this amount is a huge loss for his clan, it should be enough to satisfy the two madmen. As they keep talking, Jian says that no matter how much money someone has, it all gets lost in the face of death. Seeing this, the man wonders if these crazy people are trying to threaten him, calling for the cult leader. He says he will only charge 10 silvers. The fifth elder asks if the man is ready to live in poverty, no matter how much money he has. His leader claims he is smart. Frightened, the man shouts, assuring that he can't just give away information for free. However, the protagonist says that no one gives away anything for free, making the man admit he never suspected him. Asking what they'll give him in return, the psychopath says he looks like a child eagerly waiting for a Christmas gift. Thus, he states that this Santa Claus will leave him alive in exchange for the information. Mengi starts to see him as a demon. While wiping his tears, the protagonist says he won't get his gift if he keeps crying. After the negotiation ends, Jian says that they need to start with the most urgent matter at hand. Mentally, the manager thinks that this man is the devil himself, while informing that he will send the requested information. However, he will have to look for the specific groups that could be useful to the cult, so he will need some time. The protagonist asks how much time he needs. The man tries to say it will take about 30 days, but Jian gives him 1 week. Taking his knife, the psychopath says he will give him 7 days, adding that he expects everything to be ready after this deadline. Changing the subject, he asks the manager to tell him about the Kunlun sect. Manga explains that this is a Taoist clan located high in the snow-capped mountains. It's a place that is difficult for strangers to reach, and because it is a closed-off place, not much is known about it. However, they managed to unite 9 sects into a single group. Even though it's a small group, its members are powerful. But for some unknown reason, they declared war on the protagonist's cult. All of their disciples were sent down the mountain. Reflecting, John wonders if he should have killed them back then. After all, they are a small elite group. He asks if this means the superiors are no longer interested in their disciples. Manga confirms that's what it seems like. Suddenly, the protagonist stands up, realizing this is a disguised blessing. He tells the manager to send him the rest of the information. Looking at the man, the crazy one asks what kind of relationship they share now. The man says they are business partners, but Jian claims he's starting to feel sad. Since there's a saying in the world he came from stating that 2 men become friends after fighting. Placing his hand on the man's shoulder, the protagonist asks again what kind of relationship they have. Getting nervous, the man says they are friends. Leaving, John says that a friend is someone who would sacrifice his life to protect his partner. Someone who would give his life so that the other can live his, leaving Mengi more and more apprehensive. With a smile, the protagonist says that he is under the care of his friends. His cart passed through a kind of forest. Jian asks if Horan is still at the inn, which Dongwang says is likely since she would have communicated otherwise. Suddenly, a black shadow passes beside their cart. The horse becomes extremely frightened. Not understanding what is happening, the 5th elder asks what's going on. One of Horan's subordinates apologizes to the leader, informing him that they had to block the road due to an emergency. The woman asks him to go to the Manhua cult immediately to ensure his safety. Inside a palace, someone asks who those people are. In a letter, it is stated that they will visit them soon, asking them to prepare for death, signed by the Black Blood sect. Daedok calls for his lord, asking if he can speak about the sect. The protagonist tells him to be brief. He explains that the sect is surrounded by rumors, but it's known as an organization without essence. Their main source of income comes from murders. They also don't hesitate to commit cruel acts, regardless of gender or age, as long as they are paid accordingly. The protagonist stays quiet as he reflects on the information. The bald man says that these people sent this letter as a death declaration, but assures him that he doesn't need to worry. After all, they've already set up a complete plan. At the entrance of the cult, a person wearing a black cloak approaches the guards. One of them points his weapon, saying that he will attack if the person continues moving, and asks him to reveal himself. With that, they keep ordering him not to get any closer. The 1st elder had asked them to attack any suspicious person who approached. Keeping this in mind, the guard attacks the person, stating that he already told him to stop. But to his surprise, the person appears behind him. In the blink of an eye, the mysterious man had taken down both guards. Surprisingly, something catches his attention. Towards him, several arrows have been shot at him, but suddenly, the figure disappears, causing the arrows to hit the ground. Some soldiers point upward, saying he was there. The man extends his arm, throwing something down. A cloud of smoke is generated, and the man says he lost the intruder, trying to find him desperately. Catching the attention of the elders, everyone starts shouting, alerting the presence of an invader. The 5th elder, along with Horan, is enraged by the fact that an assassin is so confident in his territory. Someone gets nervous as the door opens. Sitting in the leader's chair, the person says that he was expecting an entire sect to visit him. However, only one enemy was sent, admitting it's disappointing. The man sitting in the chief's chair says he will listen to him first. Yuppei asks what he is doing there. The assassin is confused by the situation. He places his hand inside his clothes, but the fat man asks him to at least explain the reason for his visit. Behind him, the protagonist points his weapon, informing him that an assassin should never let his guard down, and asking if he knows what an assassin should always do. Killing the man, Jian says that he can never show mercy to his enemies. Everyone is shocked by this, asking if the leader is okay. Daedok starts laughing, saying that his plan went just as he imagined, claiming that his lord is truly incredible. He recalls that they would have had some difficulty if he hadn't killed the assassin, but everyone says that it was predictable. But for some reason, the 3rd elder becomes extremely interested in something. Approaching the body, she says that there's something there. Her companion tells her to be careful, as there may be poison in the body. The woman says it's not that, informing that she found a message. It said that the leader of the Black Blood sect would love to personally pay his respects to the new leader, but it's not time yet. Therefore, to show his goodwill, he sent him a pendant from his sect through his most trusted subordinate, asking him to clean the pendant well before wearing it. With the treasure in hand, Horan becomes confused by the message. Like her, everyone, including the protagonist, doesn't understand what that was about. The bald man who had come up with the plan becomes extremely nervous with the words from the leader of the Black Blood sect. The 5 stand still, staring at each other without saying a word. Angrily, the protagonist looks at the first elder. Pointing his weapon, he asks if it wasn't that bald man who planned everything. Daedok starts sweating coldly, not knowing what to do. Summoning courage, he asks his master to wait and listen to him. Apprehensive, he says that this is normal. After all, the assassin killed his men. However, some cult members appear, asking if everything is alright. Everyone asks why he is so shocked, while the first elder asks how they are still alive. With a psychopathic expression, Jian is about to shoot his head. He keeps mentally praying, asking his leader to wait. After a while, they are gathered around the table. Chiolo explains that if this spreads, the Alliance will soon be watching their movements, and this could be an obstacle to their path of total domination. Horan says that if they want to do this, they first need to cover up the mistakes of the past by contacting the sect. The fifth elder asks what his sister is talking about, as their glorious clan would never apologize to another organization, claiming that above all, this was a misunderstanding, but she says he would never say that if it were his people. Someone raises their hand, asking if they can say something. The bald man says he may have a solution to this situation. Pointing his weapon, Jian orders him to speak, but if he wants to poke the bear, his end is near. The man freezes in fear. Stating that he won't speak, the protagonist takes a deep breath. Stopping from pointing his weapon, he says that this will have to be done. This leaves Daedok completely lost. Suddenly, the crazy man starts laughing. Pointing at the first elder, John says he will leave him in charge. The man, growing more nervous, asks how it could be him. The protagonist claims that he can kneel, cry, beg, or do anything like that. Still, he needs to think of a way to solve this, making Daedok lose all hope. Still incredulous, the man was in a completely different place. He was accompanied by two subordinates. One of them says that apparently everyone is here. The three stand in front of the Black Blood Sect's palace. One of the assassins was watching them from above. He signals to his companion, who was also on one of the rooftops. With that, the entrance gate opens. The first elder begins to enter the palace, frightened by the fact that everyone is wearing terrifying masks. One of the men says that his master is in the room ahead. Making him even more nervous, a corridor with several warriors has been formed in front of him. The sect master says that his mother didn't expect to see him so soon, as it's been a long time since they last wrote to each other. A man with the scariest mask of all says it's a pleasure to finally meet the leader of the Bloody Death sect, claiming that he had been preparing for this meeting for a long time. A large banquet had been set up. The man says he hopes it's good enough, as Dago came from so far. However, the first elder says that he truly understands him, claiming that he is tired of that chief. He says that every time he thinks of the leader, he starts turning red, and his companions try to say that he is drunk enough. But the bald man says that he is a child getting involved in adult conversations. The leader of the Black Blood sect calls for him, asking why his messenger hasn't returned yet. Sweet and cold, Daedok says that there was an incident on the Mongu bridge, and even though they tried to save him, they couldn't do anything, reaffirming that this is the truth. Claiming that the man is dead, the masked man stays silent, not saying anything. The first one trembles while admitting that he doesn't know what this person is thinking, wondering if he should run. The sect leader says that this is normal, assuring that it was just another one of his subordinates. The bald man agrees with him, while mentally not understanding why this person is being so kind. Getting up, Shionbek says that, above all, he would like to know if the necklace sent to him touched his heart. The man says he carries it everywhere, and the man quickly gets up. Looking out the window, the sect master lifts his mask. With a sinister look and smile, the man says that this is very good. Placing his mask over the window, he says that in relation to his dead man, he would like to apologize to the master. Confused, the bald man asks what he is talking about. Shionbek says that this way they will be on equal footing. After all, they killed his precious subordinate, and the first elder lost his precious master. The crazy man explains that the necklace given to them contains a poisonous candle, and if you stay in the same room as it, a chill will run down your body. Suddenly appearing behind him, the man completes, saying that after one day, his limbs will gradually stiffen, not allowing him to move. With a terrifying look, a sect master says that it will be at that moment where his place will take on a new meaning. Daedok asks how he could do such a horrible thing, but Shinbek questions what's wrong with an assassin using poisonous herbs. Looking directly at him, the man says that if he is so angry, he should consider killing himself once and for all. However, the first elder says that insisting on past regrets is just a way of self-harming. The bald man says that apparently there's nothing else to discuss, informing that he will leave, but the sect leader asks if he gave him permission. Nervously, he asks if the master has anything else to say. With a blade in hand, he says he didn't say he would let him live. The elder tries to speak to him since the man theoretically killed his superior. Moreover, he's on his side on this matter. Extremely frightened, he asks why his guards are standing still, ordering them to attack that crazy man. But when looking at one of their faces, he asks how that animal can be more scared than himself. Going back to the moment when this was decided, Daedok was begging his master to reconsider, as if he goes alone, he will die. The protagonist agrees and tells him not to worry about it, claiming that he will have the best bodyguards with him, plus the bald man will surely come up with a plan. Seeing the sect master raising his sword, the bald man wonders why they sent such incompetent people. He cries for his life, declaring that he doesn't want to die there. The man stops his sword, while someone says that this is very funny. Another man says that this kind of thing doesn't change change anywhere. Both eyes on one of the guards while he says that when he was young, he got used to receiving tips every day from a woman, removing the mask that covered his face. The first elder's eyes widen in surprise at what he sees. Stammering, Kyunbaek asks how that person got there. Turning toward him, he asks if the master knows why he didn't spend that money. It's because everyone knew one thing in common. Nowhere in the world does anyone do you a favor without a motive behind it. Jin points his weapon at the man's head. Going back a little before that, someone knocks on the door, calling for his master. Hyoldo says that if the Lord doesn't mind, he would like to take a look at that necklace before it is used. The protagonist tells him to take a look and asks if the guy can figure out why his dog is playing with it. Looking closer, the second elder says that he was apparently right. While John plays with Mongu, his subordinate informs him that something is inside the necklace, detecting a venomous candle sneakily camouflaged. At that moment, the psychopath becomes extremely angry with me, asking if he is sure about that. Hyoldo confirms that it was not a gift, and he informs that apparently the first elder was right. Getting up, the protagonist asks if his dog is poisoned from playing with a necklace. His subordinate tells him not to worry since the animal wasn't exposed for long enough. But if he had taken a little longer to notice, Mongu could be dead. With all of his bloodlust, John assures that he will kill every single one of those worms. Seeing that reaction, the second elder realizes that he wouldn't listen if he asked him not to go. Therefore, he says that his master might be in danger if he goes there. But there's another way to get there safely. Euphoric Daedok says that his master is still alive, unable to believe that he saved him. But, extremely enraged with him, Jian orders the bald man to leave. The sect master says that he really found it unlikely that he would die from a simple poison. Even so, he would regret being there. With a disturbing smile, Hyunbaek assures that he will make him lament for not having died sooner. With a small smile, the protagonist says that lunatic is ridiculous, questioning why he is so happy, asking if that insect can't see what is in his hands. The guy says he has never seen a weapon like that before and wonders if he will even have time to use it, saying that few have seen his secret technique. However, no one has survived to tell how it works. The water in one of the bowls moves like a wave. He uses the final gale of the Black Blood sect, unleashing the attack of the distorted veil. However, his head rolls, the guy simply starts falling backward. Jun claims that his secret technique is the same as his. Many have seen it, but none of his enemies survived to tell the story. Just like him, the former master of the Black Blood sect. He hears several hurried footsteps. In all the corridors, the sect members were running toward the noise. The assassins positioned themselves in front of the door, their blades crossed in front of their bodies. Preparing to face them, the protagonist orders all those who wish to die to advance against him. As soon as they jump, one's already taken down by him. The lunatic blocks the attack of another, slashing his throat quickly. With that, the battle intensifies and he defeats another one. Thus, he rushes toward the crowd, killing one after another without leaving room for mistakes. The bald man was sweating cold while listening to the sound of gunfire. Extremely nervous, Daedok says that his lord truly is a monster in martial arts. After a short period of time, the room was covered in bodies and gunpowder. Jeon wonders if that isn't strange. Recalling his past, he remembers that when he was younger, he preferred one-on-one fights. But the way his battles have been going, more and more enemies keep appearing, remembering when several people attacked him at the same time. But he says that fighting like this is simple since you only need to kill one of them. As long as you're sure you've killed one, the rest of the wolves will turn into sheep. Seeing more sect members, the protagonist says that he basically just needs to choose the right target to kill. Looking at his weapon, he notes that he doesn't have many bullets left. Suddenly, something comes toward him. He is startled while also feeling surprised. An explosion occurs in the area. Someone was angry somewhere else. Warren tells the Guardian that he needs to become stronger, ordering the guide not to let him go alone. However, Shulo asks her not to worry about that man, but the one asks him to at least send some people along. Placing his drink on the table, the man calls for the third elder, asking her to calm down for a moment, informing that he believes there is no need for all this since he would never let his lord go alone. Dunwang asks if his leader is okay. While the man questions what that blood on his face is, the protagonist complains about how he got there. Wiping his face, Jian says that the blood is not his. The fifth elder asks how those bastards dared do this, declaring that they will all wake up in hell tomorrow. Seeing that, the protagonist curses at his subordinate, asking why he came there alone. On the other hand, one of the sect members says that this cannot be true, just as he is struck in the face. Deng Wang's direct bodyguards had arrived. A fist wrapped in flames appears. Another man ties his bandana. That was the Death Squad, opposing the assassins of the palace. The fifth elder says that he has gathered his entire personal unit. Mentally, for the first time in a long while, the protagonist admits that he did something useful, informing that his revenge is complete. He asks Deng Wang to finish everything. With this order, the man already launches one of the warriors away with a kick. Quickly, he runs to attack him before he can even recover, preparing to strike him with another punch, sinking his enemy into the ground. The other assassin stands still, watching that. Heading toward them with immense murderous intent, Deng Wang asks what they are looking at. Complaining, he asks if they're not going to attack him, launching a big strike against one of them, and taking advantage of the broken door to throw it at the others. Soon after, he starts a sequence of kills. Like a mad dog, the fifth elder keeps running. He destroyed everything that stood in his way, as if, with each blow, he grew fiercer, moving in such a way that it almost seemed like he wasn't physically present in the location. Hearing and seeing all that chaos, Jian says that he is definitely useful. As always, the bald man was extremely frightened. He shouts, trying to warn the cult leader. After killing the assassin, the protagonist asks if the first elder is speaking to him, making the man scared. Members of the Black Blood sect were surrounded by Deng Wang's squad. The fifth elder asks his master how they should deal with the rest. Simplifying, these are the people who had the audacity to use a sword against him, but even if he kills them, it won't bring any return. However, Jian notices that they will maintain their fighting spirit until the end, even while surrounded by his men. But he wonders what this is. Suddenly, the man begins to walk towards the enemies. The cult leader calmly moves towards them, seeing that there is one person much smaller than the rest. That small being trembles while holding its blade. He directs his hand toward her face. The person hiding behind her can't move from fear. A small child holds back her tears while looking at the protagonist. This makes him extremely angry. Remembering his past life, he recalls a moment when some people were lying on the ground with their hands up. Someone strikes one of them on the head, asking why she isn't begging properly, telling her to seem more pitiful. A man yells, questioning if she would do better by having her legs broken. A small, malnourished boy says he will try to improve, apologizing to him. Returning to the present moment, John kneels. He asks if there are more children her age there. The girl shakes her head negatively. He stands up, extremely angry, while one of the assassins questions if the kid has forgotten his duties. The man orders the child to wave her knife, but her head is pierced by one of the protagonist's bullets. He calls for the girl again, asking her to close her eyes from now on. Irritated, John asks if it's not enough that they gave a knife to a child, now they want her to use it to kill someone, calling them human scum. Taking the little one by the hand, the protagonist tells Deng Wang that he will leave with her first, declaring that the remaining ones should be completely annihilated, ordering them to destroy them to death. Some time passes and they've already gone on the road. The child is sitting with them. The fifth elder is surprised to know that his leader has this side. After all, his appearance doesn't show its kindness. With that, he calls for the child, asking when her name is with that terrifying aura he gives off. The girl quickly starts wanting to cry. Looking at her master, Jian seemed like he wanted to kill him. Deng Wang tries to say that he didn't do anything to make the girl feel that way. The protagonist tells the child not to worry, asking her to feel comfortable. Shaking, the girl thanks him for saving her life, lamenting that she couldn't help much. But she affirms that she will always do her best for anything he asks. The protagonist says that even keeping her alive, he has nothing in mind for her to be useful. Confused, the child asks what she should do. Surprising her, Jian tells her to just play. While looking outside, he says that children just need to play well, eat well, and that's it. Someone screams, asking if the cult leader is there. The second elder asks if he is injured, but the protagonist quickly says no. Horan sees the child and asks who she is. The woman says that she's very cute, while her leader says he needs a favor. Jamin says that from now on, the girl will stay there, asking the elder to prepare a place for her to spend the night. Suddenly, Manga runs to him. Confused, the protagonist asks where his dog would go if not to his owner. The little dog had stopped in front of the child. The little girl immediately falls in love with the ball of fur. She extends her hand to Manga. He starts petting her and saying how cute the dog is. At that moment, Jian gives a slight smile. All the elders are surprised to see their leader genuinely smiling, but he quickly says that he will have the third elder do something for the girl, claiming to be tired. However, before leaving, he asks for the child's name. The girl says she was called number 121, informing that she doesn't have a name, as that was the only way they referred to her. The protagonist says that in that case, they need to change that, calling her Haru, declaring that from now on, the girl will only be called Haru. It affirms that there is no big meaning behind it, it's just Haru, asking her to live happily. Making her feel like she's in another world, the child thanks the cult leader. Crying, Haru says she will truly live happily. The protagonist lets out a soft sigh upon seeing that. Hyolo says that while he was away, they received a scroll from Mengi and asks him to take a look. Thus, John opens the message and starts reading. Suddenly, he tells Deng Wang to prepare. With his usual wicked smile, he says that they will need to go on an adventure to find their human shield companion. Later, the protagonist was sitting on his bed. He kept observing the message that Mengi had sent him. The chief of the Haman province greets the master of Manga's cult. The man says that the first step to strengthening the cult would be for him to donate 36 acres of forest to project an image opposite to that of the sects. Due to its large size, this would be a significant force for the Mangu church, since a total of 36 families, currently led by Jintak, a figure known for his strength, are ranked among the top 10. Reading that, John assumes it is hard to imagine something like that, but if he has one of the top 10 masters on his side, it would be useful. Lying down again, he says that for now, he should just focus on resting. At dawn, someone calls for the master, wishing him a good morning. The fifth elder, along with Haru, was waking him up, saying that preparations for his departure were ready. Deng Wang tries to say something else, but he gets slapped in the face. The protagonist complains about his sore body while asking what the child is doing there. She looks to her friend, asking him to speak. The fifth elder says he woke her up to see the master's face. After threatening him during the night, John asks if the man is ready. Deng Wang asks his leader to try on a special outfit he prepared for him, claiming it would match him well. The protagonist asks if they are in some kind of fantasy land for him to offer something like that. However, Haru says that it's beautiful, but the big guy says that apparently the master didn't like it. He stands there for a while, deep in thought. With that, John wears the outfit prepared by the fifth elder. Both praise him, declaring it suits him. Already tired of it, he calls for his subordinates so they can leave. However, the girl calls for her master again. She says that while he's gone, she will play a lot and asks him to be careful. She even gives a slight smile again, validating the girl's words. He asks her to play as much as possible until his return. Outside, some people talk about how it's getting late while carrying supplies. The protagonist says that it's just the two of them and questions why all that baggage. To his surprise, the third elder says that the luggage is hers, explaining that she thought this trip would be long. Confused, John asks if the woman is going as well. She assures him that this is obvious since anything can happen on an adventure. He kind of likes the idea of having 3 people, but seeing how she's dressed, John asks if Horan is really going like that. The woman asks if it's not good, but the leader simply says it's a bit excessive. On the road, they discuss the place they are going to. Dunwang asks why they can't go straight to the dragon's headquarters, since they're heading back to the Black Tiger's headquarters. The protagonist explains that they can't just meet the boss directly. The third elder adds that they have no direct connection to him, so they'll contact his vice leader instead. Curious, John asks what kind of person the second in command is. Their horse starts getting very tired, as if about to collapse. Noticing all the movement, he quickly asks what's going on, but the coachman apologizes to the master. The fifth elder suggests it might be a good idea to have a meal, asking if it wouldn't be a good idea to camp and spend the night. After some time, the 3 were sitting around the campfire, and Horan asks the leader if the food is to his liking. Eating like a pig, he says it's edible. Suddenly, a noise comes from behind a bush. Both elders notice the presence. Someone steps out from the bushes, apologizing. A woman asks if they could give her some food. Horan looks thoughtful, admitting that she has a strange feeling about it. The woman had many wounds and scars on her arms. The third elder says that while she's not cruel enough to deny food, she needs to judge her by her current condition. Apparently, she's being chased, so they can't get involved. The woman doesn't insist, claiming she understands and that it's fine. Still, she grabs a spoon and bowl, saying she'll eat quickly. Even the protagonist, who is a psychopath, feels uncomfortable with that crazy woman. After finishing her meal, the girl apologizes and introduces herself as Songren, stating that she'll repay this kindness in the future. The third elder says there's no need for thanks and asks her to leave now that she's eaten. She starts blaming herself, saying she'll leave first, wishing them a good dinner. But they ask what the woman thinks they will eat after she finishes everything. Horan says she will make another meal for her leader, asking him to rest in the carriage while she does so. As told, John goes to the carriage. However, he notices something that catches his attention. Several warriors are riding around, patrolling behind the woman. One of them stops and asks if the young man has seen that woman around. Seeing the portrait, he has no doubt that it's Songren. But in reality, what irritated him most was the way the soldier spoke to him. Taking a deep breath, he tells himself that it doesn't matter and tries to calm down. The crazy man praises himself as he says he hasn't seen her and mentions being tired. However, now it's the guard who gets angry. He asks if the protagonist knows who they are, questioning if that worm wants to die. In a frightening manner, John asks if the man knows who he's speaking to, repeating that he's never seen that woman. Suddenly, Horan appears, saying that neither of them should stand in the way of the other, asking them to take another road, so they can ensure that no blood will be spilled unnecessarily. At that moment, no Wi-Fi signal reaches the guard. The man says that before checking the carriage, the woman asks the leader if everything is fine. He continues grumbling as he prepares to open the doors. However, even he doesn't understand what he sees. The crazy woman was eating, assuring them that she was about to leave, but thought they would go in later. Smiling, Solomon says she just didn't specify where she was going. Seeing that, John begins to lose his mind. Hey everyone, did you enjoy the story? I really liked it. If you want to follow the next part, make sure to subscribe to the channel and leave a like. See you in the next story, guys.